It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in on a game week edition of Take Command. That got you all fired up, Logan Paulsen. Yeah, I'm Craig Hoffman. We got a preseason game on Friday in New England and a joint practice before that.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, kind of going through all, like, you know, we had our production meeting with the coordinators and the head coach today, and we're getting ready for travel on Thursday. You know what I mean? Like, it's a game week. It's happening. And obviously, it's the tenor of this is a little bit different than, you know, regular season game, but it's football starting, and it's our first, as a fan base, an analyst, it's the first opportunity to kind of see the team in whatever iteration takes the field on Friday. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely not expecting a ton of starters, if any starters, to play on Friday. That's just how the first preseason game tends to go these days. And that actually puts a lot more importance on the joint practice on Wednesday. So, Logan, since you're not traveling up till Thursday, I'm not traveling at all. We thought we'd bring in a big gun to help review the joint practice, and we went as big as possible. So John Kibe's going to join us coming up on Thursday's show. So mid-morning, we'll record with John. He'll be up in Foxborough, and then we will put out that episode hopefully by midday on Thursday, reviewing the joint practice, which will also, I think, lead us into what we expect out of the game, depending on what we see in that joint practice. Okay, yeah, that guy's definitely probably, he seems to have gotten his work. He's probably not playing in the game, right, but we will preview the game as well. So Kime on Thursday with us here on Take Command. Very much looking forward to that. But in the meantime, why have joint practices become so important? We're going to talk about that here off the top of the show, and then we'll get into specifically some of the position battles and things that we'd be watching for. And we're looking to hear, you know, we'll ask John about on Wednesday, and we're looking to hear everybody's reporting on about this joint practice. But it is not hyperbole to say, Logan, that a lot of the kind of new wave of coaches, we'll call it the McVay-Shanahan era of coaches, those guys seem to really value joint practices more than preseason games. Why do you think that evolution has taken place?
So I think, you know, we've talked about this a little bit in years past, and I think a couple of things. One, it gives you more control. And I think that's ultimately what you're looking for, right? It's like if you're a coach, like sometimes in a game, right, you might not get a 2-minute drill. You might not get a red zone drill. You might not get the third string guy and the fourth string guy a 2-minute drive. And again, you're trying to evaluate them one-to-one. So how do I know, you know, if the situations are totally different, how they handle these opportunities? And so obviously when we're in a joint practice, I can go to, in this case, Mike Vrabel and be like, hey, Mike, like, I want to make sure that we get 2-minute. I want this kind of plays. This is why we want to do it. And then Mike will say, okay, yeah, we can accommodate that, but can you give us, you know, team run or whatever it is? And once we've kind of worked all that stuff out, it helps us evaluate. So from a coaching standpoint, it gives us more control. And from an Adam Peters perspective or from a GM perspective, it lets you see guys from the other team. It lets you see guys from your team. It lets you see how real stuff is. Because I think that's another thing people forget. In the preseason game, we're not actually like running real plays. It's like day 1, day 2 install, like basic stuff. Here we can kind of open the bag a little bit more. It's not televised, like they can't air any of the stuff. So we can kind of be a little bit more aggressive with what we want to show versus one opponent who we're not playing in the regular season. So I think there's a lot of advantages. And I think maybe the penultimate or the most important one is it helps keep your starting quarterback healthy. Like I think about like the New England Patriots when Tom Brady was there, they were in a joint practice, you know, all the time because it let Tom Brady see defenses, get the reps, but you couldn't touch him. So he always came out pretty healthy.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that Joe Witt Jr. talked about yesterday, Monday, as we record this on Tuesday, for those that might be listening to it later, when he spoke to the media was, you know, it's about time for us to see some other guys. And it is not just like the frustration that we talk about with like fights and training camp and stuff like that of, you know, you just keep running your helmet into the same dudes over and over again. But I'll ask you to try to see if I can pry a story out of you. Is there a guy that you were a teammate with that was just a way better player than you, but you had his number because you just got to go against him in practice every day, and you're just like, yeah, I know how to block Ryan Kerrigan or Brian Arakpo or whoever, even though, like, if you had been on another team and only got to see him once a season, you probably wouldn't have won that matchup as often.
Yeah, I think the one that first comes to mind is Ryan Kerrigan. Like, Ryan Kerrigan is a great player. You know, he's one of the best players in the franchise's history.
Franchise all-time leader in sacks, like, you know, Ring of Fame type of guy. for
Yeah,
the
so I'm not
Commanders.
saying that like I ever like killed Ryan Kerrigan, but I did feel like I really understood how he played and like what technically I needed to do to be in the right position to make the day hard for him. So, like he had like a very specific way he liked to lay his hands, and I knew my hands had to come up in a certain way, and I knew my footwork had to be just right. And I could see how if you were for a different team, like that would be really hard. You know what I mean? Like that would be really hard to deal with that over. But I had 1,000 reps of this exact strike, of this exact step, of this exact pass rush. And over the course of how many years we play against each other? 3-4 years. Like you're like, I kind of feel really good about where he's at. Like what I need to do to get him. Same thing with like guys like Lorenzo Alexander when he was playing a stand-up edge. Like he would give people fits because he was so physical. But I kind of knew his line. I kind of knew where I needed to put my shoulders to kind of keep him out of the run. And that's in some ways like it kind of bred a false confidence for me
Right.
going into these games, right? Because I'm like, oh, okay, feel pretty comfortable, right? But then
I can block Ryan Kerrigan. I can block anybody.
But then you get to see somebody new, kind of to your point, and you're like, I don't know this guy as well. So it's funny. Like I was talking to Fred Smoot about this the other day, and like coming out of any joint practice that we did. So we had one against Houston and one against New England when I was here in Washington. I always felt like I was more ready for the preseason game because I had seen them more. I'd seen the guys I was going against. I kind of could watch some film, review some stuff, kind of get ready for the preseason game in a way that I couldn't prior. And I do think it helps with some of that stuff, the familiarity. And so I think like what Joe Wood Jr. is talking about is like, I don't want familiarity all the time. I want to see how you respond to. That was the other, this is maybe even kind of a higher level point, is the thing that I got really comfortable with was the structure of our defense. So like, for example, when Jim Haslett was here, it was a 3-4 odd structure, right? So like you got the nose, the 4 eyes, the 9s on the outside. And so I knew the exact calls versus that stuff. And so when you got to a 4 down, like what were the calls? Is this an overfront? Is this an underfront? Are there 2-3 techniques? Like what's the insertion path? Because you see that same pattern or you see the same structures all the time. So it kind of gets you as a coach or you as a veteran player, a joint practice is what I'm talking about, to see different stuff. So like, let's say I'm running a seam versus single high and our team's a single high team. Like I've run that rep 400 times in training camp, but now all of a sudden it's a 2 high team or it's a quarters team. And now my routes,
or they just run their single high differently. Like they bend coverages in a different way.
Correct. And so like, that's where this stuff becomes super important and it's like sneaky important. And so like as a player, I always felt really uncomfortable in joint practices, partially because it was so new and I didn't have the comfort level and familiarity, but it's good for the coaches and the front office to see how people handle that variety.
Definitely. And because ultimately your job wasn't to be able to block Ryan Kerrigan.
Correct.
Your job was to be able to block whoever's across from you. And that's going to change week to week in the NFL. And so you have that opportunity to see, okay, Trey Amos is playing great against the Commanders wide receivers. How much of that is particular matchups or the quality of the Commanders wide receivers? And we can talk about that more in detail a little bit later. But it's stuff like that. And then I think the other point that you made that I want to really double click on here and go into a little bit more depth of why it's so valuable to have these joint practices versus the preseason game is you are not at the mercy of the randomness of a football game. Correct. Because you could have, we're going to play the offense one drive, but there's a weird tipped ball off a guy's helmet and now we're going out for a second drive because there's an interception, or a guy just dropped the ball in open space and there's a fumble. Obviously, if you want to get situational work, you're not going to play your offense for a drive, pull them out, and hope you get a 2-minute at the end of the half, and then put them back in for the 2-minute. Like that's just not how you do things. Like once you're out, you're out. A lot of those guys go and take the pads off. So the fact that you're able to get the situational work, and especially when we know that's something that Quinn values at an extraordinarily high level, you can get it ones-on-ones. You can engineer what you want and then be competitive. And like you said, do all of that with the safety of Jaden Daniels in a yellow safety jersey, as opposed to having him out there and exposed to the elements.
And I think the other thing too, kind of to piggyback off of that I haven't really experienced until I started coaching high school football, and they have these like preseason scrimmages, is it lets you see kind of if this new thing you're trying works, right? So like, let's say I want to bring a new pressure, I want a new, side adjust on the perimeter for the offense, or I'm trying a new run, and it's killing our defense, right? Because our offensive line really knows how to block it versus defense, or it's killing our defense because, like we understand how Cliff Kingsbury calls the protections. And then all of a sudden we go up to, New England, we call it and it gets stuffed. And it's like, oh, maybe this wasn't as good as we thought, or, oh, I didn't think that they could do this. Like, let me get on the whiteboard and like rule this out. So I do think like that stuff is also really important, because I'll tell you, like, I played in a bunch of probably, now that I'm thinking about it, like almost 40 preseason games in my career. And one of the things is that the game plan's never complicated. Even in the third preseason game, or the old third preseason game, now the second preseason game where the starters are playing, it's not complicated. So, and I'm not going to show the good stuff. I'm going to keep all that stuff close to my vest. But now I can, like, Joe Witt Jr. can throw that pressure and be like, oh, they blocked this differently. They got in a full slide. Like, what do we want to rule out here? So, or how do we want to rule our blitzes versus a full slide, as an example? So I think that stuff, again, just letting you do more stuff, letting you kind of explore the offense more, get ahead of that curve a little bit, is super, super critical for these joint practices. And again, as a player, I despise them. I couldn't stand them. But as a coach, as an evaluator, as an analyst, it helps with all, like, giving context to everything you're doing offensively and defensively.
Why couldn't you stand them? Was it just like you were someone who learned quickly and could take advantage of the repetitive nature of it, and there was a randomness that it was like, oh, I am not in control anymore?
I think that's probably part of it, for sure. Like, that's actually, now that you mentioned, I had never really been that self-reflective, honestly, but that for sure is why. Because I could pick up the defense really well. I knew the coverages. I'd actually study the installs from last year. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be that ahead of it. So it's kind of psycho stuff, but I was trying to make the team, so I'm not going to.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. Just real quick, because Will Compton was the same way. Like, he would get the installs and know it was coming, and then it was really easy for him to play middle linebacker because he was shooting fish in a barrel, but he was trying to make the team, and I kind of respect the resourcefulness there as opposed to playing it straight.
Yeah, and so, like, I could do that. But also, I think the thing that I found most frustrating about joint practices is the tempo. Like, what is the tempo of practice? Like, when you're practicing with your team, you know the tempo. I understand this is how this person's going to go. This is how I'm going to go. They know that. And then when I get to a new team and I'm going through the whistle like I do in practice, everyone gets irritated. Everyone gets pissed off, right? Or you get a guy like in a walkthrough drill. Like, I remember doing this with Houston. Like, we were doing kickoff, and it was supposed to be live special teams to kind of get reps, but the wedge was dead. And I was like, okay. So, like, we did our reps. We kind of locked arms and ran in, and no one got hit in the wedge. And then our group went, and somebody didn't hear that they were dead if they went to the wedge, and freaking annihilated, like, straight harpooned somebody in the wedge. And everyone got mad, but I was like, I don't want to be that guy getting harpooned. Like, when I'm expecting you to stop, like, so there's always this anxiety in these periods, because, like, this one's live, this one's not. We're tackling the ground here, we're not tackling here. The practice structure changed a little bit, and that kind of uncertainty, like, not of the personnel or the scheme, but of the how hard are we going? Right. And I was talking to Ken about it. It's like, this is not a game; it's a practice. But you're another team, so this feels like it should be a game. It's like, you know, like a racehorse. It's like, you can't, like, just jog a racehorse out. Like, they're going to sprint, right? They're going to run the lap as fast as they can. And so now it's like you're asking that racehorse to be in between sprint and walk, and they haven't really practiced that. And that's how I felt oftentimes in those joint practices. And I think that's oftentimes why you get these big fights, because you get these guys together, and it's like the tempo is not clearly defined. The coaches aren't abiding by the tempo. And then all of a sudden it's like my favorite example, when Houston came up here, I remember the first day of joint practice, we kind of got after him a little bit. Like, we ran the ball well. We completed every ball. Like, we had a really good day. And then, Jay had said that he had talked to Bill O'Brien, and Bill O'Brien said, it doesn't matter about winning the day. We're not going to worry about that. But they were on Hard Knocks. So 2 weeks later, you see Bill O'Brien in the training camp being like, this is nonsense. You guys are terrible. Like, he didn't say those words. He was a little bit more.
He used the HBO language.
And you guys got your butts kicked. So the next day they come out and they lay one on us, right? And so I was like, man. And so we go into the meeting, and then all of a sudden Jay's saying, oh, they beat your butt, whatever. And then so that third day is an absolute, like, atomic.
It's a bloodbath, which is why nobody does 3 days of joint practices anymore.
Yeah, right. Because it's like one and done, man. If you didn't get it done, we're moving on. So, but again, like, that's where, like, I talked to Dan about this the other day for our pre-practice interview, and he's like, you got to trust the other coach, right? You got to trust that their messaging is going to be the same as your messaging. You're trying to get the same thing out of it. Because if somebody's trying to win the day, you're gonna let a bunch of alpha males out on the field, and they're gonna do alpha male stuff, and you're gonna get a huge brawl, and that's not productive for anybody.
Yeah, I think you have to approach it with like, hey, we're trying to win the day, and it's okay if they win the day too. We are trying to get stuff out of it. There is no scoreboard. It's practice. The goal is to get better, and then pray that is actually how that plays out. The joint practice fights, everyone knows they're coming. That's why you typically now don't even see 2 days. Like you just see the 1 day. I mean, I was there for the Jets practices in 2018. Where the fight like started kind of on the left side of the field, like left hash, and it's kind of coming towards us, and we're on, and so it's like moving towards the hill where the fans are in Richmond, as you remember the Richmond setup down there, and so the media, we're all kind of watching it, and we're like, time to start moving. Everybody pick up their chairs. They're coming our way. Trent Williams is trying to punch people. I don't need to be anywhere near that. And moving out of the way. But that one was scary in part because it spilled over into the crowd. And it's like, you're getting up on, it's like, hey, everybody move. Football players are punching each other in the head. Dudes swinging helmets. There was one player whose identity I will keep private because I don't think I was supposed to know this, but he absolutely smashed a fridge to pieces after he was dragged off the field. Got to see a good photo of the broken Gatorade fridge after that. I think I don't know whether he punched it or he smashed a helmet through it, but it was carnage. But yeah, like dudes get upset because you're out there being super competitive. And if you're not in agreement, and I think that point that you made about why you don't like the practices also leads directly to the fights, right? It's like, if you're a competitor and you agree, especially two football players, like y'all compete and bash each other's heads in all the time.
Right.
As long as you agree that that's what the terms are, that's fine. But if dude's expecting like a C level of physicality and you bring a B, that's going to cause some beef, and hopefully they can avoid that. Do they have a special meeting? We made this joke on the radio show yesterday, Logan, but I will bring this joke that maybe isn't a joke to you. Do they bring a special meeting or hold a special meeting with Marshawn Lattimore to emphasize the no fighting, especially with Stephon Diggs?
I don't think so. I think it's just a general meeting. Like if I'm Dan, I'm going to address it. Like, because every year we had a joint meeting about every year that I did a joint practice, you have a meeting like, hey, fights won't be tolerated. You miss a day of practice, like all those kind of things. And I remember with the Patriots, like Bill Belichick, like he gave the speech. He brought both teams up and like gave a speech. Like we were all New England Patriots. And, like there were times where like I really wanted to fight in that practice because they were doing stuff that I didn't think was very fair. And it was funny talking to the New England guys because they were like, oh yeah, this is every day. It's a defensive driven team. Like a great example, I was talking to Tan about, he remembers this a little bit too. It's 7-on-7 and they would bring 2 extra guys over. So now it's 9-on-7. So as the tight end in a 3-point stance, the outside linebacker would just, instead of rushing the passer or stopping the run, would literally just like jam or press you right in the shoulder, and you'd have to rip through it. And then the middle linebacker, who was Devontae Hightower, would come over, and it was like a clean earshot to your face. You know what I mean? And so would smash between these 2 guys. So the 2 inside routes are dead, right? And then the outside guys was like Browner and some other guy, and it was just PI. The refs would throw flags. It'd be pass interference. And the next play would be exactly the same thing. So 7-on-7 was nothing. So you're like, I want to fight everybody here, but you're like, I don't want to miss practice either. You know what I'm saying? So like getting that cleared up, I think is also helpful. But yeah, so
you went and drop kicked Bill Belichick. So that was the solution.
I have a definitive memory of running like power load later in practice on the same day. And I have never in my career blocked power load as hard as I blocked this play. It was like basically like I was the wing player and I'm blocking back to the backside inside linebacker. And I didn't even look at the defensive end. I just sprinted as hard as I could and ear-holed this poor linebacker, who's probably like a undrafted free agent, and just decleated him. And no one said anything to me. But I was like, this is my fight today. I don't know who you are, but you just wore every bit of frustration that I had from this practice today. And the last.
Do you have the film from that?
I don't know. No, I don't have it, but I probably could track it down.
I would like that. If you can track that down, I just want you to send that to me. I'm going to get a Logan Paulsen text message, 1 attachment video, and I'm just going to start jumping up and down on the couch. I want to see Logan earhole some UDFA. Then I want to figure out who it is, and then we'll have him on the podcast. All right, that's the overview. Anything else for joint practice that we should talk about? We covered fights. We covered how not to have fights. We covered why they're important beyond the fights.
I think the main thing that I'm excited to talk about is why they're important in the context of this team when we do offense defense coming up next. Yeah.
So let's do that. Next is now on Take Command. Take Command podcast. That's Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman, and we are talking about the Commanders-Patriots joint practice that will go down on Wednesday in Foxborough. By the way, Foxborough, weird place to have an NFL team.
Weird place.
Literally like a 1 or 2 lane road in and out of town. So good times. I will have to ask Kime where he stayed. Like, do you stay in Foxborough? Do you go back to Boston? Do you go down to Rhode Island? Like, I don't know. We'll ask Kime all those important questions and what actually happened to this joint practice on Thursday's show. But what are you looking for? Or, obviously you're not going to be headed up there, neither am I. But like, if you were there, and in terms of what you hope that the reporters and everyone there is watching, what do you think the team is trying to get out of it? When we look at the offensive side of the football, there's a couple of things that definitely pop into my mind. But like, what's number one on your hit list?
So I think for me, it's like the offensive line, how they compete against that defensive line for New England. Because I do think it's like kind of a much maligned group recently, but I do think they have some talented pieces. I'm trying to remember all their names right now, but like Barmore, like they have that end that they drafted from Georgia Tech a couple years ago. Keon White is his name, and like big physical dudes. And so again, it kind of goes back to that body type thing we were talking about earlier, or kind of familiarity with your own team. Like, if I know Mike Vrabel, he's going to play a bunch of different fronts. He's going to play a bunch of different coverages. He's going to have a really aggressive defensive unit, and he's got some talented pieces in there. So how's that offensive line look? Now that they're a little bit nicked up, like Wiley, Allegretti, Biotish, Coleman, and Tunsil. Like, is there any kind of? And again, I don't know if Coleman's going to practice because he hasn't practiced.
Right, I was going to say, for housekeeping purposes, Coleman missed practice on Monday, and there's a chance that it's like him and like 6 other dudes that missed practice, and I would be surprised if any of them traveled, nevertheless practice. So probably without Coleman, but as you were saying.
But just how that group looks, because again, they've looked like over the last, I don't know, probably 4 practices, like they're coming together in a really nice way. And how does that translate? Because again, they're really going to drive this team. They're going to drive Jane Daniels' kind of year 2, lack of regression or a surging into 2025. So that's one that I'm really keeping an eye on, and just how they pass block, how they run block, how they handle these situations. And again, it's kind of tangentially connected to Jane Daniels. Everything is, but like how they support him basically is the thing. For offense, I'm really keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think the offensive line play, again, they signed Milton Williams to the Patriots this offseason as well. So, like, they've got him. They'll talk about the different fronts. Like, they'll probably play multiple, but their base defense is a 3-4, like, with a nose tackle. Like, if you go to ESPN.com and look at their depth chart, they have a nose tackle column, which a lot of teams do not. So, it is definitely going to be interesting to see how they handle all of that. And I think who is where is also an interesting question, right? Like, with Coleman out, do they pop Allegretti over there? Do they pop Wiley over there at guard?
Does Coleman start, right? Yeah, that's a great point.
Do we all of a sudden start cross-training Josh Connerly a little bit more? I know that was a sore subject in the spring, and then it kind of wound up being not a thing where they're just trying to focus him on right tackle. But like, if you're down bodies, like, you got to figure out how to do it. And if not, then Connerly's probably starting at right tackle. So, Chris Paul is obviously an option. So there, who is playing where? And then I think also, like, the preseason, I could have seen, a guy like Coleman maybe getting some reps in the first game. Connerly as well, most of the vets sitting out, but like, who is going to start? But we can talk about that more on Thursday's show. But I think that front on the pass protection side is obviously interesting, but in some ways I'm more interested in the run game in that way. And that also loops the running backs in, like how many, the rep count, are we starting to get some early hints on just how high certain guys are on the depth chart, how much of a battle there really is there? Because that was something that, we haven't talked about the unofficial depth chart because, one, there wasn't a lot of surprises on it, and 2, it's unofficial and they love to emphasize how unofficial it is, so I'm not going to read too much into it. But, Bill, for all the talk of like, oh my God, he's working with the ones here, like, he's RB5 because he's behind 4 guys that have played real NFL football and played well. But like, what's that rep count look like for him in a joint practice where the reps are even more valuable for getting ready for the regular season than other practice situations? Like, is he getting reps with the ones in this? And if he is, what's it look like? And then we can talk about what that means later on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that thread applies to the entire offense and really to the entire team. But I think like with the offensive line, is it Chris Paul that's going to be working in? Is it Trent Scott? Is it Foster Sorrell? Like those are the interesting conversations we talked about when we did our 53-man roster projection. Like, and again, I think like this is a great opportunity for them to kind of put their money where their mouth is. I'm talking about the offensive staff and say like, these are the guys we want to see in this joint practice. These are the guys we want to see early in the preseason game, whatever it looks like. And then you mentioned, Jakrowski Merritt and like what he's talking about. Like, I think they're excited about him, but with running back, and we've said this the entire time, you got to see him in live reps. So with a rookie, especially, I think you want him playing in the game as much as possible to see how, like he is away from the coaches. Because that's one thing we didn't talk about. So, for example, in a joint practice, like you kind of set practice up where the coaches are right there on the sideline. You can kind of yell out and communicate. Sometimes they stand behind the drill so they can have even more kind of acute communication in between drills. And then now on the field, like one of the things that I remember about my first preseason game is like you're standing on the field by yourself. There's no coach. There's nobody behind you. It's just the 11 guys. And I think with young players, like that feeling is super important. I know we're talking about the practice, but I could see why maybe he doesn't play as much in the joint practice hypothetically and plays more in the game because he's a guy, because he's young, you want to give him that opportunity to kind of say like, I am by myself. I'm making my own decisions. I'm dealing with the ebbs and flows of this game independently of my coach, at least until I go to the sideline. So for all those young guys, like Ja'Cory Brooks, some of those young receivers, I think I would like to see them play more in those situations because of that. So as a result, the guys with more experience, I think probably get more playing time in the actual practice. Like Zach Ertz is going to get a lot of playing time in the practice, I'm sure. John Bates, right. A lot of playing time, but you understand who they are as pros. So do they need the reps in the preseason game, or is it better to allocate those to the young guys? So that's where I'd say, like, I think you're going to see a lot of that kind of division here into, between what you want out of the practice and what you want out of the game.
Right. And the running back position is so unique too, because it's just impossible to judge, and not impossible. Well, no, it is impossible.
It's challenging. Yeah.
It's impossible to judge in a practice exactly how good a guy is, because you just don't know if he's going to break through that arm tackle at the line of scrimmage or not. Like, how hard is the D lineman trying to really hold him up? You can't know unless it's live, and you're not going live in practice anymore. It's just not a thing. So, for a guy like Bill, who it looks like he's squeaking through these holes, it's like, okay, we're going to find out for real on Friday. And so I think that's interesting. The outside stuff is unfortunately going to be pretty lackluster due to injury / contract, right? Terry's still holding in / has the ankle. Noah Brown has been in and out of practice. You kind of wonder, is he going to be out there? And then even on the New England side of it, I was just looking this up real quick because I know Christian Gonzalez has been out. Not only is he out, but Carlton Davis is out as well. So like you're outside of Debo, all of the marquee names are missing on the outside. Sure. So that is a big opportunity, I think, if you're like a Luke McCaffrey or a Jalen Lane. Do you go out there and be like, all right, we're going against third or second string corners? Can we dominate those guys? Like, that's, if we're catching passes from Jaden Daniels and we have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, do we have, that's a huge opportunity to show out and to make big plays. But I do think that's a bit of a bummer. While there is some good stuff happening on the inside, and we'll see in terms of the outside stuff, how much juice there is to squeeze in terms of evaluation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's, again, like one of these, football purist things. You're like, man, you really hope for this match if you really want to see these guys. But then, people are banged up when they're nicked up. So, but I, like with anything, like this is a great opportunity for some young guys to stand out. But I do think, again, if I was coaching, which I'm not coaching in the NFL, I would want to see the young guys probably more in a game setting and really let those veterans kind of execute the offense the way that we're envisioning it at the moment, so Debo, Jaden, Zach, like those relationships against another team. Like, can Zach beat man coverage the way he's been beating man coverage down here? Like, I want to see what that looks like. And I'm very confident that he can. Debo's role, like in the slot, he's found all these explosive plays, you know what I mean? So can he do that versus New England? And again, it's not quite as exciting as it was advertised when coming into this joint practice with, Gonzalez and all these and Davis. But I do think there's still a great opportunity to learn. And this is like, again, I'm not saying this is the end all be all. I feel like I have to put that modifier on here every time we're talking about joint practice. Like, it's not the end all be all, but it's just such a good data point, and it's like, hey, maybe we can't use this player the way we thought because he kind of got stuck up or jammed up in a way that we weren't expecting here with this style of player versus this player. And I think like that's really the exciting thing about joint practice, in my opinion, is get to see some of these matchups, get to kind of go good versus good and get a really good barometer for the roster. Because think about, we talked about this before we got on, like the joint practice versus Baltimore. Like everyone was like, oh man, Forbes looks great. Benjamin St-Juste looks great. And then they go up there and it's like, we actually can't cover anybody. And, then it was like, that was the first huge red flag for the season was that. And
that was 2023 was the joint practice against Baltimore Ron's last year. And turns out both sides of the ball were bad that year.
Yeah. And it's a great opportunity to be like, okay, as a coach, like, wait, did I give too much credence to X? Do I need to modify this a little bit, right? And good coaches do that, right? Coming out of certain games, like you'll see depth charts shift, but also you'll see coaching emphasis shift a little bit too. And I think this is a great opportunity to kind of just see where you're at offensively, and make adjustments as needed.
Yeah, for sure. So anything else on the offensive side that you're thinking about? For me, the one other question I guess I would have for you that will play into everybody is like, how much schematically are you, I don't say giving away because it's still a closed practice, right? Because that's the other thing too, is like you can test stuff out in the privacy of a joint practice. Yes, reporters see, but they are told, like part of your kind of agreement to watch practice is there's only so much detail you're allowed to give. It's like, yes, you're there, but these videos or these periods of practice are closed to shooting. Now, depending on if fans are there, you probably put even less in because then they're not subject to the same rules. They can film whatever. But I think of a guy like Debo is why I asked the question. Like, how much of the Debo stuff are you even bothering with in this joint practice versus what they'll see in the regular season? And then how does that play into both practicing it to get ready? Because I think so much of the time in the training camp period, we talk about evaluation, but it's also the chance to get ready for the actual season. So how much do we see it? Some of the I don't say the deepest of Cliff's bag, but like how much of this is basic stuff that they'll be running versus, I don't say game plan stuff, but a little bit deeper in the playbook.
Yeah, if I had to put something on it, probably like 65 to 70% of your offense will be in for something like this. So that's a fair amount, and like you're not like tilted to 11 there, but you've got game plans, you've got checks, you kind of run certain protections, you're trying different formations. Maybe for Cliff, as an example, you go a little bit more no huddle than you would at practice at home, just to kind of make sure that it's still giving you the results that you want and the responses you need in practice. Just to kind of, again, see where that bar is, right? Not everything's in, but like, okay, our fastball still works. It's still giving us the things we need. And then you kind of make the assessments and adjustments off of that. So that's where I'd say it's a funny thing. Like I think about it again at the high school level, it's like you want to see everything. You want to make sure everything works. You want to make sure the kids are comfortable with everything. But you got to say, like, I don't want to give my entire game plan, but let's go principles. Like, let's go off of like, hey, I want to see how the outside zone works, how the play action pass works. Do the guys understand the protections? If they bring a pressure, like what kind of pressures are they bringing? Are we picked up versus this? And so again, like that's where it's like we're not putting everything in. We don't have every solution in, but a good chunk of it's in just to kind of check the boxes and make sure, okay, yeah, we're looking pretty solid here. And I think if I was Cliff, I would expect something similar, based on what Dan said in pressers and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. You want to be as fast as you can be while under control. So you don't have a kid hit you in the lip with the helmet.
That's right. That kid in the helmet. Yeah, I was playing scout team fullback today, and I was coaching everybody up, and the kid got kind of knocked back on the run and hit me right in the face, and I was like, "Oh goodness gracious!" Like, my teeth.
No helmet for you on the scout team. Yeah, maybe next time they got to get you in a helmet out there.
Yeah, all my teeth are still there, which is good. A little bit of a bloody lip, but no bell rung felt like, so came out of it relatively unscathed. And
you've been perfectly coherent on the podcast, looking at your face.
Happened.
There's no.
It just happened 15 minutes ago. So we'll see how it looks over the next couple of days. And good thing the broadcast is on the radio this weekend, in case it gets all bruised up. So.
Yeah, nothing a little makeup and a good camera angle can't fix. All right, when we get back, we will talk about what this Commanders defense is going to see from Drake May and the Patriots offense. Wrapping up here on Take Command, previewing the joint practice with the Patriots. Again, John Keim will join us to review it on Thursday. But Logan, you were telling me a little bit earlier, you think this is where the real fun is. Commanders defense versus Patriots offense. Patriots offense, much improved personnel-wise from last year. They obviously used their top 5 pick on Will Campbell. They've got some vets, including Morgan Moses on the offensive line, Garrett Bradbury at center, better receiving talent this year, and Drake May, I hesitant to say anything nice about Drake May for fear that the commenters will come out of the woodwork. And I did that one time, and that people think that we draft. I mean, well, it's just like, there's some people that you said nice things about Drake May early in the draft process in 2024, and then it's like, oh, you're a Drake guy. It's like, actually, if you listen to the whole thing, that we said that Jaden Daniels should be the pick, and that turned out to be correct. But Drake May looked really good in stretches last year. It's okay for 2 players to be good, and Drake May in year 2 is fairly intriguing league-wide storyline. So I'm definitely interested to see what this looks like. So what's so intriguing to you, and like what's the most important thing to watch for in this joint practice on this side of the ball?
So I think we've seen the offense for the Commanders has been the offense. So it kind of feels like, like they're going to be fine going into this joint practice. Cliff is going to do Cliff things. Jaden's going to do Jaden things. Is the offensive line gelled? That's the major question. But like the structure of the offense is approximately the same. And when you look at, again, the defense, like look at the maturation and the total evolution that they've had over the last 8 practices. Like it doesn't look like the same group. And in large part it isn't. I think there's only 2 defensive backs from last year. There's a lot of turnover on the defensive line. And they have at times been dominant in practice. Like their ability to be aggressive at the line of scrimmage, kind of press guys up, be in tight, sticky man coverages, make plays on the football. And, like I think I've talked to you about this. I think Jaden Daniels is playing pretty darn good at the moment. Like tight window throws, good timing, but like the defense is just suffocating. And and then their ability to bring pressure. And is that because they know the players that they're going against, or is that because they've kind of taken a step from a defensive personnel and they're allowing Joe Witt Jr. to play the defense that, we've talked about a ton that he wants to play? The downhill, aggressive, attacking, high variance defense. And so to me, this is a great opportunity. You're going to see, probably knowing Mike Vrabel and knowing his background, probably more different stuff. You're going to see more 12 personnel, more 13 personnel, more 21 personnel, more traditional base sets here. And does it still work? Do your free agent secondary player just as your young draft pick? Like, I mean, Trey Amos has looked awesome. He's looked like a 5-year pro, but does he still look like that when he's going against Collins from New England? Like, and say what you want about
Collins or Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas. Like, these guys are pros, even if they're not great. Even Diggs diminished at this point in his career.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought those guys up. Like, Collins to me is like, he's big and he's hyper physical. Like, he's one of the more physical receivers. He's like Alan Lazard level of physicality, right? Like, how do you handle that? How do you handle Douglas? Like, how do you handle these different pitches that people are throwing? And I want to know, like, does it work? Can you be this aggressive all the time and let it play? And so to me, that's why this is the biggest storyline, because we talked about it with who's the analytics guy we had on? I'm so sorry, I can't remember.
Dan.
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, Pizzuto.
Like, one of the things he said is, like, if you're trying to stave off regression, if the defense can go from 30th to 16th, that's going to stave off a lot of regression, because it's going to get you more possessions as an offense. It's going to limit field position. It's going to do a lot of things. And so right now, all early indications are that's the way the defense is headed. And this is the first real data point that says, are we ready to have this kind of level of responsibility in the structure of the team? Yes or no? I'm obviously, you can feel my energy. Like, I'm really excited to hear about what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. It's also something where, Joe said this, you said we talked about the style. Like, Joe said it outright. Like, it's not really the quiet part out loud. It's just, he said it out loud. Like, he's like, I want to be a press guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's who I want to be. And you could tell, like, he's saying, like, last year we didn't have the chance to do all that. And that's something I had to adjust to. And I thought it was a really interesting and retrospective and correct assessment of himself, right? Like you enter the season saying, this is who I want to be. You have to adjust. That's coaching. You can only be what your players allow you to be. It doesn't matter your desires as a coach. But ultimately, there's a reason why he wanted to get the personnel to play the way that he wants to in his idealized state, because he thinks that's the best way to play defense in the NFL. And we've seen it be successful, especially this like press man stuff against a diminished group of receivers. Without Terry McLaurin, with Noah Brown in and out, there just aren't a lot of guys outside of Zach Ertz and kind of Deebo Samuel that can beat man coverage at the NFL level. So now that you have a veteran in Stephon Diggs who knows how to do that, you have a super physical guy in Mac Hollins, you have Demario Douglas, there's a couple other guys.
Good player, man. Like he's one of the better slot players in the league. And I'm not being hyperbolic there. Like his movement skills from the slot are tremendous. So it's just that to me is maybe not. That's not Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu. Like
sure,
but it's a serviceable group of starters with a young
you're not joint practicing against the Bengals. You will, by the way, see the Bengals and Zach Taylor announced like the starters are going to play for the Bengals in week 2 in the Monday Night Football game that's here. So like that's pretty exciting. But like, you are getting, respectfully, I think, better, or at least like guys who are more versed in NFL route running than Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane, et cetera, et cetera.
And you have Hunter Henry, you have Austin Hooper. It's not the best group of skill position players all the time, but it's a solid group. Like you can, and this is the other thing too. If the quarterback is everything that New England media is saying about him in terms of Drake May, he's shown the flashes that he did last year. Like this could be a real test of this defensive philosophy. Like. He's a scrambling mobile quarterback. All these pressure packages that you've cultivated, like, do they work? Can they keep him in the pocket? Can you keep him contained? Can you, again, one of the things about practice that I think has been really illuminating is defense has forced a ton of tight throws. And why Jaden is special is because he's made the throws, right? Like the one that Deebo that he had the other day where it's like over the shoulder, like this right ridiculous. In his hands, like insane throw, right? Can Drake May do that? Can he do the same things? You're talking about low percentage throws. Like, let's see it play out. So that's, to me, this is the thing. This is the thing about the joint practice I care about most. I don't really care about it for the preseason game. I just want to see, can the starters play with the same intensity that they've been playing with? And that applies to the secondary. Like Will Harris has been great. Quan looks awesome. You look at Tyler Owens, like his ability to play big nickel in certain situations, the man coverage skills we talked about at the beginning of camp, and you get down to the defensive line, it's the same thing. Like, is Javon Kinlaw that dude? Because he's looked like that dude a little bit in camp, right? Is Payne where Payne's at? Is Dietrich Wise the great run defender? Like, all these things need to be answered in the joint practice.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see about the defensive line as well. Like this is an offensive line for New England that was one of the worst in the league last year. As we mentioned, ton of different guys now personnel wise. Like there's basically no holdovers from what they had last year, position over position. I think Onwenu, their guard, maybe he was playing some tackle for them last year. So like it is a completely revamped unit. And so the pass rush, like what's it look like? Can they get some pressure? Obviously, if they do 9-on-7 or team run or however they do that part of it, like do we see the improvements? And then I think the other thing that I'm really curious about is, again, from a deployment standpoint, that whether it's big nickel or whatever the packages are, like the Dominique Hamptons, the Kane Madranos, some of the other safeties, the Tyler Owenses, like how do those guys get deployed? And is that any kind of hint that we look back on in 3 weeks and look back and say like, oh, that was when we kind of started to really understand what they wanted to do with those guys, who was going to make the team and how much they were going to actually play come regular season time?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned their offensive line with Morgan Moses, who I think is one of the more underrated players in the NFL. Like, I played with him. I know him really well, so maybe I'm biased. But, like, man, he does a great job in pass protection. Oweno is one of the better guards in the NFL. Garrett Bradbury's a good pro. Jared Wilson, one of the more athletic guys coming out of college in terms of playing center. He's moving a guard for them. And then Will Campbell, obviously, is the 4th pick overall. Like, this is going to present its own kind of challenges. And talking with some people up there about, like, the protection plan, it's different than what the Commanders have been doing here, right? The way they set stuff. Can you still create the creases and seams in the matchups versus this? They kind of do like it's a little bit more vertical, if that makes sense. Like they kind of lean on the 3 technique. in a way that is kind of akin to when McDaniels was here with Tom Brady, right? Like that was how they wanted to set the pocket, right? Vertical, create a really tight pocket, but there's no creases in it, so the quarterback can get the ball out. Like, does the pressure work the same way? Can you create the seams? So all of these things, like the offense, again, like you probably could feel it in the analysis. It's like, yeah, it's kind of, they're going to be the offensive line.
We'll see.
It's going to be what it's going to be, right? Because again, right. Jaden is a good football player. He seems like he's still playing well. It seems like he's still a pro's pro. But the defense, because they've had such a crazy turnaround this offseason, like, is it real? That's my thing. And I want to believe it. It looks real, but this is the first test. And how do you answer the questions on the test is going to be incredibly exciting. Offense, defense, the whole deal. Or defensive line, secondary, and then the packages thing like you talked about.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited, and we'll learn more Wednesday. We'll see. We follow the reporting on social media and all the different places that people are doing stuff. We're listening to all the other reporters' podcasts, and then the real information will come here because John Keim, he's not going to say anything. He's not going to write on ESPN.com anything that's good. He's not going to do a John Keim report with a bunch of no. He's going to save it all for Take Command. And John is listening probably to this podcast right now, somewhere driving around Foxborough, being like, "No, I'm not, you buffoon." But Keim is going to join us on Thursday. We're very excited about it. We will press him on everything that he saw, and then we will collectively get ready for the things that we didn't see and that we are hoping to see in the game on Friday. We're still on a preseason schedule. We're not going to do like an instant reaction show or anything after. We'll review the game probably on Monday. So while they're, I understand. If something crazy happens, maybe we'll do a podcast this weekend. But I don't think we're going to stay up late night after the game and do anything for preseason game number 1. And hopefully that's warranted because nothing major should be happening on Friday. But we will definitely do a game review, all the usual stuff. So we look forward to that next week. We look forward to Keim on Thursday. Logan, safe travels, sir. And we will actually, I'll talk to you before we travel because we're doing the show on Thursday. Right? Yep. And then you're getting on an airplane.
That's
so with that, we'll see everybody on Thursday. I'm done talking now. Another Hoffman rambling outro completed here on Take Command.